right, another day, another show, and we're missing somebody today.
We are. I don't know if it's our third stooge or our third amigo, but our third guy is not here. Our third Will. What are we
Eh,
gonna do?
I have no idea. That's a tough call right now. What are we
Yeah,
gonna do? What are we gonna do?
we're gonna suffer through it. I think we'll be okay, but without Robert, it is definitely not the same.
Robert throws a wrench question, and I always love those because it really kind of throws us off and
Man, the
makes
pressure's on. The pressure's on
yeah.
us. We're gonna try to figure that out. Well, what we got
So
going on today, bud?
Well, we've got an interesting person on today. We haven't had too many consumer people that work on the consumer side, and today we have a somebody on the consumer side. This is Raj Mills with Sleep Number. She's a VP of research on the research side of Sleep Number Bed, and
Now,
going to
this
be
is the
talking.
same sleep number that we see the commercials about and everything. This is a yeah, big deal.
Yeah, so it's going to be exciting. It's going to be very exciting, at least I think, because it's going to be talking about the mattress technology and what it can't do, kind of thing, and a little bit away from what we normally talk about. And so we're not going to be talking about leads. We're going to be talking about springs. I don't know, but
Yeah, well, I think it'll be fun because, we think about those beds, especially with all the science we get wrapped up in. I wonder if there's some real science behind what they do. It might be interesting to see if Raj can kind of clear that up for us.
I agree with you there. It'll be fun to see that, and as well as what else it can provide in the future. I think that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to this.
All right. With that being said, let's get the show started.
Sounds good.
Hold up. Folks, we've got some exciting news for you right now, right here on Sleep Tech Talk. Want to let you know that we are looking for 2023's Person of the Year. That's right, Sleep Tech Talk's 2023 Person of the Year. How are we going to do that? Well, listen up. Any guest that's been on the show so far, and any guest that's going to be on our show for this year, 2023, are all nominees or all candidates for this recognition. And how you can help is by listening and or viewing that specific episode. We're going to be counting the number of plays for each episode. We're going to be counting the number of listens for each episode and taking that into consideration. If you have anybody that you think should be a candidate, let us know. And we will see what we can do to get them on board as a nominee. At the same time, we need your help to make this happen, to select that person of the year. Along the way, we hope to introduce some other awards as well. But in the meanwhile, do everybody a favor, do us a favor, and listen in to your favorite guest. So by early next year, 2024, we'll be announcing the winners. Now back to the show.
Lights out.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another fantastic episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the sleep podcast, bringing a new epic into sleep technology. Emerson, I'm sure you like that one.
I love
All
that.
right. Well, folks, we've got another great episode today. And as always, we'd love to bring you fantastic guests. But before we start, just want to remind you all to do not forget to subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. If you're listening on any of your podcast platforms, don't forget to hit the star ratings or whatever rating based on the system that you're using. And most importantly, do not forget to share this with all your other friends, all the sleep technologists out there, because we know there's a lot. And with that being said, we have an excellent guest today on the cutting edge of sleep technology. This is Raj Mills with Sleep Number. And Raj, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself today.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm Raj Mills, and my sleep IQ score last night was a 70, and my average sleep IQ score is a 79. So, not my best night of sleep last night, but I'm really happy to be here. I'm responsible for health and research at Sleep Number. And this includes the amazing work that we do with our external research partners like Mayo Clinic and American Cancer Society, as well as the incredible innovations we have around sleep tracking and also adjustability and improving sleep.
Fantastic. That's really awesome, and it's really cool to have somebody like you on board today with us. One of the things we normally do on our show is we kind of ask people, or their origin story is a great way to put it with all the superhero movies going on out there. So, what's your origin story? How did you get into the sleep industry? If you could tell us a little bit about that, please.
Absolutely. So, I actually came into the sleep world through technology. My background is in engineering, and I worked in, a lot of different industries. But prior to coming to Sleep Number, I worked with J&J in the medical device space. So, really bringing different types of technologies that are used at home by consumers, but where there's a real connection to a clinical world. So that's really my entry into sleep. And at Sleep Number, I'm lucky to have the opportunity to continue that. And my position at Sleep Number is a newly created position. By new, I mean about 3 years. And it really is indicative of the direction that Sleep Number is going in. We think of Sleep Number typically as a consumer company, but Sleep Number is really a wellness technology company and really focuses on health and a strong focus on health.
Raj, as you've been on this journey over these last 3 years, again, thanks for joining us today. This is so exciting. What has been sort of your biggest surprise? Because when people come into sleep medicine, they don't realize, or this world, that there are 88 different disorders that people struggle with. As you've gotten to learn about sleep, what has been probably your biggest surprise in your role?
My biggest aha moments are around the availability or maybe limited availability of data and characterization of sleep in the real world. Because when we think about how sleep is evaluated and characterized today, it's often in a clinical setting, which is as far opposite of your real world setting as can be. So really being able to understand sleep in the native environment without probes, in a very natural type of manner, that's something that is limited. And so that's a perspective that I didn't necessarily have.
So, Raj, it's interesting as you say that. Now, there will be always that. Now, like you said, you're bringing in one side, which is the scientific side, with all the sensors, all the probes, or whatever you want to call it. There's things on the person's body that impedes the natural sleep that they're expecting each and every day.
Mhm.
So, at the same time, the scientific community will say, well, how can you get information if you don't have all the sensors? So how do you balance out that kind of conversation?
Yeah, well, I think there's a balance of both, because when it comes to certain types of issues like apnea is so prevalent, it's highly discussed. And when you think about 80% of the population who are undiagnosed, they're undiagnosed because they need to take those steps to get to a clinical setting. So when we look at clinical or consumer products that consumers use all the time, that may be able to give them an indication that they should take that step into a clinical world where they can then be evaluated at full scale. That is something that it can work in tandem. So at home, we may not need a full evaluation but just enough of an indication that we should think about going into the sleep lab.
Yeah, you're right. When you look at like over-the-counter technology, trend data becomes really important. A mutual friend, Mark Aloya, is a part of your family now, was a part of ours, Phillips, when both Jerry and I were there. How have you guys brought his behavioral background into what you're doing now? Because that's clearly, as we look at part of the challenge of sleep disorders and waking disorders, behavioral medicine is a big part of that. How does Sleep Number fold some of his expertise and background into what you're doing?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's wonderful to have Mark on the team. It's a pleasure working with him, and he gives us so many insights, not only into sleep, but his past experience. I think that's a great question, and it adds to that tie-in between consumer behavior and consumer products and clinical, the clinical setting, because there's such an in-between, as you said, of behaviors that we can provide insights into to sleepers in order to enable behavior change. So number one, some of the sleep tracking that's out there today, including Sleep Number, smart beds, can provide those insights. We don't know when we're going to bed how long it takes us to fall asleep, because we're asleep when it's happening. And so for technology to be able to tell you that looks like this is your trend, try these, try these tactics to fall asleep faster. Those are all things that are behavioral, but they may not be evident to the sleeper unless the tracking has brought that to life. I also think that this is where the smart bed is differentiated a little bit from other trackers, in that there are adjustments and there are things that can be done on the bed itself that can help promote sleep. So for instance, there's a feature that's called foot warming, which is, it can be set at various intervals and, different intensities, and adjusted on a personal basis. But as you know, warming of the extremities helps to promote sleep. And so that's a tool that could be used to help someone fall asleep faster if that's something that they need to address. So these are small changes that can be made in the home that may, that may either prevent them from having to progress further, or at the very least, they'll have an opportunity to get better quality sleep without going into the clinic.
As you talk about the thermoregulation aspect, I just think of my home. I go to bed hot, wake up cold. My wife goes to bed cold, wakes up hot. It's no one's happy in that world. I mean, how did you, as you look back on that research of being able to manage that with bed partners, what is the origin of that? Where do you see that going into the future? What sort of a roadmap you see, into the future with that type of technology?
Yeah, so I'll just step back and say that the history of Sleep Number is really rooted in personalization and personalization on each side of the bed. So the first smart bed technology was the ability to change firmness on either side of the bed. And then as Sleep Number evolved and technology evolved, the ballistic cardiograph was introduced in the bed. So every bed has a pressure sensor that is able to collect, biometrics and calculate different sleep parameters and, different measures. But we also have introduced our latest invention last year called the Climate 360 smart bed, which has thermal regulation on each side of the bed, because we know that not only is temperature one of the largest, preventers or inhibitors of sleep, but the individuality of temperature, as you mentioned, is hard to address in a single household or in a single bedroom. And so what this technology does is allows full body heating and cooling as well as foot warming on either side of the bed. So you could be sleeping with, you know, high cool temperatures, and your wife could be sleeping with, you know, high heat temperatures, if that's the scenario you want. And you can also, you know, modify the routine. So you start with foot warming, you know, introduce cooling, and then you stop the cooling. So you can create a routine that helps promote sleep at an individual level.
So, Raj, and just now, many sleep centers across the United States do use the Sleep Number bed, but just for those who are not very familiar with a smart bed, could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So the Sleep Number smart bed, as I mentioned, has a sensor that's called a ballistic cardiograph, and it's a pressure sensor that detects heart rate, respiration, motion, and we calculate heart rate variability. We calculate restful, restless sleep, and time to fall asleep, you know, wake after sleep onset, bed exits. So a whole slew of information surrounding your sleep. And so this helps us determine not only, you know, patterns of sleep, but it helps us, you know, talk about circadian rhythm. It helps us talk about, you know, different reasons why someone might be having restful or restless sleep. You know, we talked about behavior earlier. There are a lot of behavioral, you know, things that can impact sleep, as we know, but we can isolate things like, you know, on weekends, maybe someone, you know, drank a glass of wine and that impacted their sleep. So you can really start to put together your behavior with your sleep and see those correlations come to life. And then the second part of the smart bed is the do part. So the sense part gives you the insights, and the do part allows you to change and adjust the bed on an individual basis, whether it's temperature, whether it's firmness, whether it's articulation of your head or your foot. All of those changes, all of those ways of adjusting your sleeping surface allows you to sleep in a smarter way and allows you to improve your sleep quality.
You know, one of the things that in our world with sleep technology and sleep medicine, even though there's, like we talked about, many sleep disorders, the one that we tend to spend the most time on is sleep apnea.
Mhm.
And, you know, I know from the commercials, you have a clever way of, you know, kind of pointing out ways to handle that. What's the background on that, and how do you see that role with Sleep Number evolving in helping people manage their snoring or their sleep disordered breathing?
Yeah, there's lots of room to progress in the sleep apnea space. We're just touching the surface on some of the things that we can find. And actually, apnea is a great example where you know, having insight into disrupted breathing at home versus the clinic has, you know, provides a different perspective. So first of all, at home, the data is collected every night. So there's longitudinal data night after night that can really uncover different patterns. Whereas, you know, if at the clinic, typically one, maybe 2 nights is really the top, you know, from a longitudinal perspective. Even 2 nights, as you know, you know, is rare. It's usually 1 night in the lab, so it doesn't necessarily give you that longitudinal perspective. So that's something that the you know, technology like Sleep Number can bring. And as I mentioned, you know, so many people don't even realize they have apnea, or they don't realize what the connection between snoring and apnea is. They think of snoring as a sound their body makes, or something that's annoying to their partner. But not necessarily that connection to their health. So there's such opportunity to educate consumers on, what they're experiencing and how that might impact health, and why they should go to a clinic and have a more thorough evaluation.
That's really good, and that really fits in, dovetails really well with, like you said, consumer on one side and clinic on the other side. But that kind of brings me into the next question: what's in the future? I mean, will it cook you dinner for you so you can fall asleep right away in bed, or what's in the future of the smart mattress? I mean, AI technology built in. What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, stay tuned. But what I'll say is that today we have a lot of AI that drives, drives our algorithms. But some of the work that we presented at Sleep and World Sleep really are things that we're working on to bring to the consumer. We've presented work where we've been able to detect COVID and influenza through the data that we collect. And we've run studies with our scientific advisory board to create that model and that algorithm. I'll mention that we have over 370,000 sleepers who have opted in to participate in research. So these are our everyday sleepers who have agreed to participate in research, and we use that sleeper pool, that sleep science sleeper base, to be, we use them to be able to administer surveys. So for our COVID study, we asked them, when they had COVID, when they felt symptoms, when they started to feel better, what their patterns were, and then we mapped their contextual and subjective survey data to their biometrics and their sleep data. And we were able to see really incredible patterns in their sleep at many times prior to symptom onset. So really fascinating work there that we hope to bring to the consumer in a consumer-friendly way. I'll also mention that we're, in the beginning, I did mention we were working with, we have a research collaboration with the Mayo Clinic, specifically the cardiovascular group at the Mayo Clinic, and we're working with American Cancer Society on long-term research to look at guidelines that can, around sleep and how it can impact cancer prevention, cancer treatment, and recovery as well. So, we hope to be able to bring all of the findings from research like that to the consumer one day.
Well, it's exciting to hear what you're doing with Mayo. Dr. Summers and what they're doing there they're just incredible. He's the guy that brought us sympathetic nerve activity and how it related to sleep. So that's exciting to see that you're working with them, and what you're doing in the future is something that we can look forward to. But Jerry, I know you've got some final thoughts as we wrap up, but that's been fascinating to hear. Thanks so much, Raj.
I agree. I wanted to ask you one more question, but we are out of time, and we're like he said, it's fascinating here. It's really exciting, and love to hear more. But before we close, is there anything you want to add, Raj, before we close for the show?
The final thing I'll add is that, at Sleep Number, we are rooted in science. Everything we do, the capabilities we bring, have the backing of science, and that is so important to us. It's why we brought Mark Aloya onto the team, why we have the scientific advisory board that we do have, that includes Dr. Summers. So what we've seen is that not only can we leverage science to bring capabilities to Sleep Number, but we use the millions of sleepers we have, the billions of sleep data and sleep sessions we have, and the hundreds of thousands of sleeper opt-ins we have to conduct research that informs science. So it's really a bidirectional relationship where we're helping to inform science with organizations like Mayo Clinic and Northwestern, University of Pittsburgh, American Cancer Society, as well as then taking research findings and taking science-backed, science-backed facts and implementing them as solutions.
Raj, thank you so much. That's fantastic to hear, and it's really exciting. And we appreciate you joining us on the show once again.
My pleasure.
And folks out there listening, our viewers, thank you so much once again for joining us for another episode. And we can't wait to see you next time. Until then, do not forget, like, subscribe, and most importantly, share. And as you know, as we say each and every time, until next time, lights on. All right, post-cals.
Yeah,
That was
really
interesting.
Yeah, it was. I was pleasantly surprised because, you come into it like we talked about in our pre-cals, is it just a bed? Is it a gimmick? And there's some real science behind this. And they got some really heavyweights in sleep medicine that are a part of what they're doing.
I agree. That's it's a great way to put it. Those are real heavyweights, some stalwarts that they have on their board. And so, like she said, this is real science behind it. It's not just foo-foo, voodoo, whatever you want to call it. There's real science behind it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about just the two names we brought up to give context to our listeners, Mark Aloya is a behavioral psychologist, did the first research, well, tongue-tied there, on C-Flex.
Right.
And then you have Viren Summers, who is the guy that brought us the sympathetic nerve activity and all that tied to sleep apnea. So some really great leaders in sleep medicine, thought leaders. So that's really encouraging. I think the other parts are just all the different things that a bed does in one night. It's just amazing. It's something when you see the commercial, you really can appreciate that. And then to learn the thermoregulation and everything else it's doing, that's just fascinating.
So what I really found fascinating was when you're looking at the social medicine side of it, she brought up the number, which we're all very, very well aware of. Let's look at only sleep apnea. 80% of the people who have it are still going on undiagnosed. And typically the nudge is a literal nudge, somebody, the bed partner nudging the patient with, hey, you're snoring too loud, you're not letting me sleep, go to your doctor. Whereas this gives you that virtual nudge. It's able to detect the fact that there's a change in your sleeping pattern, and maybe you should get that checked out.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting from a grassroots level. I mean, your thoughts on
It's like
that?
having your own coach, your own personal coach right there with you, watching your trend data, giving you this advice. That's really an interesting insight.
And that versus putting your smartwatch on the side of the bed or wearing a smartwatch while you're asleep. I thought that's interesting because the entire mattress would probably be full of sensors, because like you said, with the thermal regulation, when you're looking at that side, the entire unit has to be wired for that. At least that's my guess. I'm not an engineer, so I
When
played
you
one
think
on a
about
Bollywood movie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you think about the AI aspect of it and where the future could take us with that. How many different things could that bed, really be programmed to do in the future to really acclimate to you, adjust to your night to night variability, particularly when you think about whether it's sleep apnea or someone that it's in a menopausal or premenopausal state, where they're really struggling to sleep because of their body temperature. That's a big deal for a lot of people. But then again, someone with mild sleep apnea just needs their head of bed elevated a little bit. That can be extraordinary. And then, there's just so many different things that, you could really break apart. There's so many more questions we could have even asked.
Right.
I know we
Right.
wanted to, but we ran out of time. But I think the sky really is the limit when you think about what this technology can really evolve to.
So what you said is really interesting, because where my mind went was not just the clinical, but you take it a step further into the hospital applications. You know very well, for example, in many hospitals, they're starting to realize that clinical setting, the sterile setting in the hospital, does not foster a an environment for sleep and the colors and the lights, and they're trying to make those changes for patients to improve their sleep quality. And I could just imagine this bed being part of it to further enhance that patient's rest and recovery from going out. And it doesn't have to be with sleep apnea, it could be anything else that doesn't allow them to sleep in the hospital. So that was,
Absolutely. Absolutely. You
yeah,
spend a third of your life asleep,
right.
if you really think about it. And if you can have that kind of extra homeostasis, exo homeostasis, so to speak, where your world is regulated for you so that you can have that best night all the way around, that's an extraordinary concept.
I agree, but hey, we are running out of time, so I have a very important question for you.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, you already know when I'm speaking like this, but
I don't know what you're talking about.
so since Robert's not here,
Yeah.
and
Well,
you
this has been
mentioned that,
painful. I feel
yeah,
like we need couples counseling or something. I don't know.
hey, couples, triples, counseling, something, but we need something there. But hey, you mentioned maybe Three Stooges. Which Stooge would he be?
Oh man, because I'm gonna go with Mo on him. He likes to be the ringleader here with the three of us, and he may have to go there. I don't know. What do you think?
I was thinking more, in lines of Curly. That's where
He does have a little bit of that going on. So this is tough.
that's tough. But
Maybe our listeners need to tell us, who's who in our group here. Yeah. If we were the three amigos, is it Dusty or Ned or who's the third one we came up with?
lucky.
Lucky, Ned, and Dusty. Which one? So, and maybe our listeners can help us out and tell us who's who in this, because yeah, we all fit all those descriptions in some form or fashion. We're definitely not the coolest people in the world.
Hey, that's a great point. So with that being said,
That's right.
there you go.
There you go. All right, miss you,
Hey,
Robert. Wish you were here, buddy.
yeah, wish you were here. Wish you were beer. But with that being said, everybody, thank you so much. Cheers, and until next time.